Alright, dear students, hope you all are doing well. Let us go ahead in paper 1, economic geology. We have studied concept of ore deposits, ore minerals, gangue minerals, what are tenor of ores, metallic and non-metallic ore minerals. So today we will study about strategic, critical and essential minerals. Okay. The main references that I've used is the book by Omeshwar Prasad and another book by S.K. Tiwari. This is a very good book which you can get online also. It is not in the library. I have the hard copy, but as of now I won't be able to give you the hard copy. So I have tried taking the photographs from this book, and then I've made a PDF and I've sent that to you all, and we will be discussing that part also. Okay, so till now we know that what an ore is. An ore deposit is a well-defined mineral deposit, okay, and it has a sufficient size, a sufficient grade, and it can be extracted or mined. That means from any ore we can economically extract one or more than one minerals. Okay, now what happens is the size and the grade of an ore deposit, it changes according to the economic condition of a particular nation at a particular time. Say for example, during war some minerals may be important. On the other hand, during drought some other minerals may be important, like for making bullet, tank, various arms and ammunitions which are used in warfare, you need different minerals, whereas in agricultural front you need different minerals. NPK are required to make fertilizers, right, whereas tungsten, zinc, iron, thorium, uranium, all these minerals are required in the warfare. So different minerals have different usage depending upon the amount of their uses or the economic conditions at that particular time. They are divided into various categories. Now I introduced you to a word war right now while studying economic geology. Now it is being done so because what happened is during the world wars it was seen that some minerals are very important, so that humans, they fight with each other and establish their own kingship, right? So what we are doing is we are trying to study economic geology in terms of benefit of minerals to the humans. Now that may be a benefit or not, that is ironically stated here, that some minerals are beneficial during wars, okay, although the wars are not beneficial for humans. So what happened is during the World War I, the first attempt was made by the US Army and the Navy Munition Board after the World War I. What they did is they classified the minerals into strategic and critical minerals, okay, at that time. So what they said that this strategic material, or now with the beginning of national policies we are calling them minerals. I'll go into that. So they divided the material or the minerals which are present into strategic and critical materials. They said that strategic minerals are those which are very essential for national defense, okay, whereas critical minerals are those which are less essential in terms of wars, but they are available domestically. So this was the idea that was given just after the World War I, and that too by the US Army. So after that various nations, they started making strategies for the usage of their own minerals. So due to this, a term national policy has been coined. So different nations, they have different policies to categorize the economic minerals. Hence, we need to know what mineral policy or the national mineral policy is. I have taken these images from a book by S.K. Tiwari. The book's name is Ore Geology, Economic Minerals and Mineral Economics. I have given the PDF of this part to you. The complete book is not required as of your syllabus now. So I've taken the important parts and I've provided it to you. You can make directly notes from that also, and you while listening to these lectures also you can make notes. Okay. So what national mineral policy is? I discussed a little before this. So there are various points which are considered while making a national mineral policy. They are: mineral resources are depleting assets. We know that. Okay, the more we keep using the minerals, they keep finishing up because they are non-renewable. So we need to make policy so that we use them in a sustainable manner. We have them right now, we have to keep them for our future generations also. Okay. Then modern economy and defense preparedness is needed, during which minerals and other mineral materials are required in a small amount also and in large quantities also. And then no nation possesses domestic resources of all essential minerals which are sufficient for its need. Like, it is not that we have all the minerals which are required for humans, be it for the use of various instruments that we are using in daily life, like microwave, like oven, okay, like mobiles, like GPS. There are various everyday usage material which are the cars, automobiles, in which we use these minerals. So it is not that within the premises, within our political premises, we will get all the minerals. Okay, so what we have to do is we need to import them and we also need to export them, because minerals are dependent upon the presence, the occurrence of minerals is dependent upon the tectonic environment in which it is formed. This is what we are going to study in Unit 2. There are various processes of formation of minerals, irrespective of in which boundary, in which political boundary they fall in. It's not that we get all the minerals in India or all the minerals in China. So here I will give you an example of Indus-Sangpo suture zone. Near the Indus-Sangpo suture zone, we get ophiolites. Ophiolites are the materials of sea. Okay, we will study this in great detail when you are in your senior classes. So the material, the seabed, it contains various minerals which are present within ophiolites. Ophiolites are the deposits, the layers of the various rocks which are composed of various minerals. So these ophiolites are present in Indus-Sangpo suture zone area. So presently we know that we are not having a very good time in the political boundaries with China and India. The main reason lying behind the acquisition of very high altitude region having not many beneficial facilities in terms of temperature, climate, altitude, the main reason behind all this is the presence of minerals in that area. It is economically very rich. Okay, so what I mean to say here is that not every nation has all the minerals. Everybody is trying to procure minerals so that they become rich in that term. Although China has been using various essential resources, essential minerals from its nation, and it has exported a lot. Okay, so a nation has to rely on foreign supply, that means. So we need new imports also, depending upon whatever consumption is. So to do so, to make the national mineral policy, what do we need? We have various categories. Okay, this is what is being followed worldwide. So some nations, they have closed door policy, some nations they have open door policies, and some have restrictive policy. The name here, it is suggesting very easily what a closed door policy is. If you close a door to somebody, he or she won't be able to enter inside, right? If you open the door for somebody, he or she may enter in. And restrictive means some may come in and some may not. Okay, so these policies are in terms of negotiation or our relationships with various nations. So talking about the closed door policy, in this policy no foreign investor is allowed to participate except those which are allies. Okay, whereas an open door policy, foreign investors can invest and they are allowed to participate also. Such policies are taken up by UK, Japan, most of the European countries also. And then is the restrictive policy. That means minority share basis is allowed while policy investment. Okay, so this is what is being followed recently by India. So India has a restrictive policy. The national mineral policy of India is restrictive in nature. Okay, so depending upon the government's economic policy, that is the national mineral policy, the strategy is made to group the minerals. So minerals are hence grouped into war minerals or war supporting minerals. War minerals or war supporting minerals. Okay, those minerals which have to be anyhow used in war are known as war minerals. While the war is on, some minerals may be used to support the war, although they are used in our daily life also. Okay, so these war minerals, they are absolutely essential for warfare. During the warfare, you need ammunitions, communication, transport, support for fighting forces in the front, you need oil, you need iron ore. Alright, so all these minerals like graphite, asbestos, beryl, quartz, fluorspar, industrial diamond, all these are used in the war. The tanks are made up of all these minerals, the bullets, the arms and ammunitions, the bunkers in which people, in which our army personnel lived, all these are essential for war. Okay, so these are known as war minerals. The minerals other than war minerals are war supporting minerals. So these minerals are necessary to maintain the industrial base of the nation. Okay, other than war, various industries require minerals in a nation. Okay, but these minerals may be used as a help during the war also. So these war supporting minerals, they are divided into strategic, critical and essential mineral. This is what your syllabus says, that you have to study what strategic, critical and essential minerals are. So war supporting minerals can be of three types: strategic, critical and essential. So strategic minerals are those which are needed for the war efforts, but in which a country has more or less a negligible resource position and has to depend on supply from friendly nations. That means we need to import these minerals. We don't have these minerals, so these are strategic minerals. Okay, whereas the critical minerals, okay, the examples of strategic minerals are antimony, arsenic, asbestos, bismuth, borax, cadmium. We have these minerals, but they are not economically viable. That is, we are not being able to extract them. So what we do is we rely on different nations to import them. So these are strategic minerals. Okay, then comes the critical minerals. The critical minerals are those which are generally deficient in viable resources. That means they are present, but they are deficient. They are not economically viable. Okay, that means we have to invest more, and in return we get less. Invest more in terms of money, and in return we get less material. But if during war or during war we need to support the war, and we need to give some minerals during that time. So we won't really see to what amount of money is being put into that, right? So that time we can extract these minerals. That means these are present, but they will be extracted only during the war time. That means if it is very necessary to be extracted, otherwise they won't be extracted. Okay, whereas strategic are those which we really don't have, they cannot be extracted. Okay, we import the strategic minerals. This is the list of the strategic minerals, and the critical minerals are those which are present, but we will have to extract them only during the warfare time if required. So these may be thorium, uranium. We have these minerals, but we are not as of now extracting them. Okay, the last one is essential minerals. These are produced in sufficient quantities, like you have a staple food which is essential for your living. Similarly, we have essential minerals also. That means these are in ample amount. They are like magnesite, copper, gold, silver. We have seen this in the earlier class also, that there are various mines present within India where various metallic ores and non-metallic ores are extracted. So those which are present in sufficient amount are essential minerals. Okay, so what do we know now? Under the National Mineral Policy, the minerals are divided into number 1, war minerals, number 2, war supporting minerals. Okay, you can write it down while I am speaking so that your notes are also made simultaneously. So according to National Mineral Policy, the minerals are divided into number 1, war minerals, number 2, war supporting minerals. War minerals are those which are absolutely essential for warfare. For example, tin, platinum, sulfur, ferrous alloy metals, etc. Whereas war supporting minerals are those which are used to maintain the industrial base and can be used during the war to support the war minerals. Okay, these are of 3 types. The war supporting minerals, these are of 3 types: strategic, critical and essential. Strategic are those which we depend on supply from friendly nations, that is, which we import. Critical are those which are present but in deficient amount but can be extracted during the war time. Okay, essential are those which are present in sufficient amount, and these are the base of industries in the nation. Okay, so this is all about unit 1, but because I want you to understand a little more, so I am discussing a little more here. So critical components of National Mineral Policy include the estimation of domestic mineral resources. So we need to know that how many resources we have during the war, which are the critical minerals which we can extract, from where we can extract, and how we have to do that. So various policies are made in this terms. So due to this, taxation policy is also made, how we have to conserve these minerals, what are the safeties that we have to use during their mining, and how we have to maintain the production rate. Okay, all these factors are used while making a national mineral policy. Okay, so there are various factors which I have discussed already. What we do, what economic geologists do, we study the geological perspective. Okay, what we do is we understand, and then we tell our project leaders or the Ministry of Mines or the nation heads that how we have to determine the geological characteristics of the ores, like grade, tenor. We have discussed this, how viable they are. Okay, so all this is what geologists have to do. And so here is a list of how India has grown in terms of minerals in 1955 till 2002. Okay, another thing which I wanted to tell you is that we need national mineral policy in India, and it started systematically developing after the independence in 1947. Okay, so other than the war minerals or the national mineral policy, earlier industrial policy resolutions were set. Okay, the policies were named as industrial policies. So they were resolved in various groups were made, first group, second group, third group, because this is not in your syllabus, so I'm not going into the depth of these. But there are what I want you to know is that within India there are various sectors. The central government sectors like GSI, the public sectors, and other PSUs like Hindustan Zinc Limited, Hindustan Coal Limited, okay, Coal India Limited, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation of India, NMDC, AMD, IBM, and various others. Okay, so after studying the depths of economic geology, you can apply economic geology as a geologist, and you can serve various positions within these esteemed institutions, be it government or non-government. So mineral processing industry, it has almost completely de-licensed now, and we have other notable features of the policy. There are various features which are noted, and among these, one important point which I want you to note is that emphasis will be given to mineral exploration in seabed, because since ages, since 1880s, okay, various minerals have been explored and they have been extracted also, and the sea area still remains virgin. We know that various minerals are present within the sea, so presently we in the nation are working to explore minerals in the seabed also. Specifically, institutions like NIO and NCPOAR in Pune and Goa, okay, these institutions, they are working on mineral exploration in sea using various techniques of geophysics, geochemistry, and micropaleontology. Okay, so this is a diagram which is showing that when you go within the sea, how many different types of minerals you may find. In the shelf area, you may find oil, sulfur, coal, diamond, various heavy minerals. That's why ONGC has its onshore rigs here. Okay, in the slope region, you may find phosphorite, chert also is found here. In the rise region, you may find oil, gas, possibly sulfur also. And in a basal plain, you have various manganese nodule. Our Indian Ocean and the Arabian Sea part, these regions which are in our territory, in the Indian territory, these are very rich in manganese nodules. Okay, so we are heading towards exploration into the sea, and this is good for your future perspective also, so this has to be understood. So in sum total, various laws, regulations, agreements, they are required to make a mineral policy for India, for independent India. The national mineral policy, it has been changing, and it has been improving day by day. Okay, every year. This is a great deal of discussion done on this. If you need to understand more, you can go through this. I have given you the PDF also. I have also given you a book along with the PDF of this national mineral policy. This book is by Evans, Ore Geology and Industrial Minerals, an Introduction. Okay, this is a very good book. It has various line diagrams which can be used while you make your notes. The contents that are present in this book are, it includes various nature and morphology of principal types of ores, the textures, and various other things which are not in your syllabus, but you may want to know, so I am giving this book to you. Classification of ores, what are carbonatites, pegmatites, okay, what are stratiform deposits, what are strata bound deposits, what are skarns, and what are industrial minerals, and global distribution of ore deposits, the metallogenic provinces, the epochs. So this is a very important part which you need to study, the mineralization in its space and time. Once you know where minerals can be formed, only then you can go and search for those minerals. Okay, this is a very good book in which part 3 is very important. Part 2 is also very important, but 3 is very important as of now in terms of what your syllabus is asking. Okay. Okay, then thank you for now, and please feel free to ask questions. In the comment section also you can ask questions, you can mail me, you can WhatsApp. So once you ask, only then I'll know if you're facing any problem or not. So please ask questions, and for your presence to be marked while I'm taking your attendance, it will be marked on the basis of the comments you're doing. So you can write seen or present in the class while you have seen this. Okay, so unit 1 is over now. In the next lecture we will start with unit 2. Thank you.